Hi there. What if how we usually see Bitcoin barely scratches the surface? What if its creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, actually set things up for something way bigger than just digital cash? Bitcoin. That word probably makes you think digital money, right? Or maybe digital gold. A way to pay online, person to person, or a new kind of investment. And that's definitely a big part of it. But what if the original design by its creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, hinted at something much bigger? What if Bitcoin was meant to be a base for all sorts of applications? Today, let's dive into one of Bitcoin's biggest ongoing debates. Should its core rules stay pretty much the same like digital gold, or should it keep changing to unlock its full, maybe even more versatile potential? This isn't just a tech squabble, folks. It's about who Bitcoin is and where it is headed. When Satoshi Nakamoto put out the Bitcoin white paper, the title was crystal clear. Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. The main goal? Letting people pay each other online, directly, no banks needed, and solving the double spending problem for digital money. This was huge, and for ages, that's what everyone focused on. However, if you look closer at Satoshi's writings, his forum posts, and the original Bitcoin code, it shows there's more to the story. It seems digital cash was just the first big use case for a technology that might have been built for much more. At the heart of Bitcoin script, its own simple programming language. Satoshi actually said he designed Bitcoin to support every possible transaction type I could think of. Every possible type. He wanted it to be flexible using script, instead of having tons of special codes for everything. This let users set their own rules for transactions. This hinted that Bitcoin could do more than just send money around. It could handle more complicated deals too. Satoshi knew that at first people were mostly just making simple payments. But he also said, future versions can add templates for more transaction types. This tells us he expected it to grow and get new features without breaking anything, pointing to a smart design meant to be a solid base for more. The question of storing no money data on the Bitcoin blockchain, okay, it's a hot topic now, and it looks like Satoshi thought about this too. The Genesis block, the very first Bitcoin block ever mined, had a headline from the Times newspaper. The Times, January 3rd, 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. Sure, it was a political jab, but it also showed that you could technically stick any data into a transaction. In talks about BitDNS, a decentralized domain name system idea, Satoshi was on board with having a third transaction type for sized arbitrary data. This hints he imagined a way to link proofs of outside data to the blockchain. The OP return, OP code, which lets you embed small bits of data, was around in the early days when Satoshi was still active, and he even helped to fix some bugs related to it. At first, there wasn't a hard cap on how much data you could put in. The community set the current limit after Satoshi left. But why? Because people were worried about the blockchain getting clogged up. Now, Satoshi probably didn't imagine OP return being used for all the big data ideas floating around today. But the ability to embed data was there from the start, and his warning was clear. Building every proof of work quorum system in the world into one dataset doesn't scale. This hints he preferred linking data proofs to Bitcoin, not stuffing huge files onto it. Satoshi's thoughts on BitDNS really tell us a lot. He saw the promise in this no-money system, but worried about bogging down the main Bitcoin blockchain. His idea? Separate, specialized blockchains that could borrow Bitcoin security through something called merge mining. This idea miners using the same network to secure Bitcoin and other chains, like one for domain names, and these chains having their own flavor of coins. This sounds a lot of like today's talk about layer 2s and side chains also. It hints at a vision where Bitcoin is the main security layer with other specialized systems built on top or next to it. This way, Bitcoin could stay lean and mean for its job as money, while still letting new ideas bloom on connected systems. Satoshi's words suggest he was thinking way beyond simple payments. He actually said, and I quote, "The design supports a tremendous variety of possible transaction types that I designed years ago." He mentioned things like escrow transactions, bonded transactions, third-party arbitration, and multi-party signature, and so on. He continued, "If Bitcoin catches on a big way, these are things we want to explore in the future, but they all had to be designed at the beginning to make sure they would be possible later." So what are these things? First, escrow. Letting funds be released only when some conditions are met. Next, bonded contracts, possibly deals involving collateral, and multi-party signature, or multi-sig as we know, needing several people to approve a transaction. These are basically the building blocks for what we now call smart contracts. Bitcoin script isn't as fancy as Ethereum, but Satoshi's design was clearly pointing towards automating financial deals. So, if there are all these signs Satoshi had a bigger plan, why such a huge debate now? This is where the big tug of war comes in between ossification, that means keeping things fixed, and evolution, letting things change. Ossification, the argument for a rock-solid, unchanging protocol, keeping things fixed. This side is all about keeping Bitcoin's main rules set in stone, just like digital gold. So who's for it? You often hear this from folks who really want Bitcoin to be a super predictable way to store value. Think of big investors and long-term holders. They're all about rock-solid stability, and they think Bitcoin's unchangeable nature is its superpower. Why do they think so? First, the idea is simple. If Bitcoin going to be a digital gold, its basic features can't change, period. Gold holds its value partly because it's always just gold. Messing with the rules all the time could make people lose trust and see Bitcoin as less of a steady, reliable thing. And second, predictability and attracting big players, big money, especially from institutions. If the rules seem done or super hard to change, it feels like a safer bet for long-term financial plans. And third, safety in simplicity. A core belief here is that a simpler, unchanging foundation is naturally safer. Every new feature or tweak can add complexity and open up new ways for things to go wrong. Keeping things fixed aims to avoid this by sticking with a core that everyone knows inside out and has been proven to work. Fourth, Bitcoin's power comes from everyone agreeing on the rules without a central boss. The worry, too many controversial changes could split the network. Think about hard forks, breaking the whole thing into pieces. And finally, the philosophy. For some people, Bitcoin's biggest breakthrough is its unchanging solid money nature, thanks to its fixed supply and how everyone can check transactions. From this angle, adding more bells and whistles just muddies the waters. Now, for the other side, this side says Bitcoin needs to keep growing and changing to stick to its original labels and stay useful as the world changes. So, who is for this approach? Here you'll find developers, users, and some old-timers in the Bitcoin space. They are focused on Bitcoin being useful for everyday people, hard to censor, and able to tackle new problems and grab new chances. And what are their reasons? First, sticking to the core values. To keep Bitcoin centralized, hard to censor, and easy for regular folks, it might need new tricks up its sleeve. like ways to handle more users or better privacy. Second, avoiding gridlock. If it doesn't keep evolving, the worry is Bitcoin could get old, slow, or fall prey to new threats, or forces trying to centralize it. Third, unlocking full potential. If Satoshi really did have a bigger dream for Bitcoin, then evolving is the way to make that dream come true. The debate of open return, that's the code for putting data into the Bitcoin, remember? It is the perfect example of this tug of war. Ideas to loosen its 80 by data cap really got people talking and arguing. A huge worry behind many of these arguments is keeping Bitcoin centralized, especially making sure regular people can still run their own full nodes. Being able to check things for yourself is a basic building block of why people trust Bitcoin. If it changes, like allowing more data on the blockchain, make it too expensive or too techy for everyday folks to run a node, then only big players with deep pockets could do it. That would mean more centralization, and most people see this as a major threat to what makes Bitcoin, well, Bitcoin. As some put it, it's not just about money versus data. It's about, can regular folks still run their own full nodes? That's the key question. It's a bit ironic, actually. But some studies suggest that being too strict with data, like keeping a tight lead on open return, would accidentally push people to use centralized services for their data needs. They will look for workarounds. This just shows that keeping things decentralized isn't always simple or obvious. Satoshi's early writings and actions, especially about BitDNS and script flexibility, can be seen as him expecting a layered setup and a system that could adapt. Maybe the plan was for the core design to be set in stone, in its ability to handle different things, not that every feature was frozen from day one. But trying to fit these early ideas onto today's Bitcoin, which is way bigger, more valuable, and more complicated, means dealing with hard choices and problems no one could have fully predicted back then. Even though it's open source, shows just how tricky it is to manage a system with no central boss. Getting everyone to agree on changes can be a real fight, sparking debates about who has a say, who speaks for whom, and the best way for the rules to evolve. The fact that there are different versions of Bitcoin software out there just proves that people in the community see things differently. These arguments, which can be pretty heated, just show how much Bitcoin future means to a lot of people. Satoshi Nakamoto started something hard enough to change and in a lot of ways surprisingly flexible. Now it's up to the community to figure out what he left behind. These ongoing arguments, they are a key part of making that happen. What do you think? This is still one of the biggest questions in the Bitcoin world. Is Bitcoin better off if its rules are set in stone, focusing on being an unchangeable store of value? Or should it keep evolving to possibly support more decentralized apps and face new challenges? How should we understand and use Satoshi's early ideas today? What's the best way to meet everyone's changing needs while protecting what makes Bitcoin special? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to keep exploring the fascinating world of Bitcoin and its future, make sure to subscribe and we will see you in the next one.